the Classics line, held in such a high regard, even though it was one of the shortest Transformer toy lines of all time. And now it is 10 years old, and oh man, like I can still remember walking into Target and asking if they had them in stock. Some stock boy brings me out a stack, goes, just pick which ones you want, and I walk off with the whole stack. Those are the ones I want. What do you, stop staring at me like that. But yeah, that'll make you feel a little bit old. But hey, the toys themselves, they still make you feel like a kid again, don't they? Especially when they are this nice. We're taking a look at Bumblebee. I've looked at a lot of modern Bumblebees, and they all started here, because this is when they started making a comeback. As you can see, this was back in the Volkswagen really doesn't like us days, which lasted until Masterpiece Bumblebee came around, so those days lasted a while. But they couldn't make it a Volkswagen, so they came up with something that's a little bit similar. It's a very squat little kind of cruiser of a vehicle mode of no specific make or model, though I'm sure some car guy in the comments already knows exactly what model it looks almost like. I do like the vehicle. It's a nice compromise. It's a little bit more modern, and I don't know, it still fits. It still works as, like, I could definitely envision this as a Bumblebee. He is cast in a pretty bright shade of yellow, maybe a bit too bright for my taste, to be honest. There's like standard yellow, there's the darker stuff they use for the movie Bumblebee, and then there's just kind of an obnoxious yellow. And this is somewhere between normal and obnoxious. Now, it doesn't really hurt much, aside from washing out some of the lining detail if you're not looking carefully. Speaking of detail, since they don't just want to make a stark yellow car, he is decoed in a lot of white striping, which goes against the black you would normally see these days. The racing stripes themselves, as well as most of the rear, this entire rear section has been completely painted over, is all in a pearlescent white, which gives it a nice kind of metallic shimmer, which is a neat little effect, and a very unique color. I don't see that on Transformers very often. Among other details that are interesting, besides clear windshield, can also give you access to complete interior. Well, not complete interior. There's like no dashboard or wheel or anything. But he does have seats that are completely molded and painted, which is kind of neat. It looks like something could fit inside there. And I really can't because his knees are in the way, but it looks like it, doesn't it? It looks like it. It's all that matters. Looks like it. There is a spoiler up top. That's not what I normally associate with Bumblebee, but hey, whatever. Some clear plastic for the headlights, which is actually a pretty good use of clear plastic that I never really mind. Silver for the grille. And toward the back, we do have some red paint for the taillights, as well as a spot where the license plate would go, as well as a hitch. Now, isn't that interesting? Well, what does the hitch go for? Well, it goes for this tiny little. Okay, so let's be clear here. Bumblebee at the classic size, they still wanted him to be kind of small, even though this is a deluxe. So to compensate, he is quite a bit smaller than your standard deluxes for the time. It's actually about comparable to how deluxes are sized now. That's sad. But to make up, he does have this rather large accessory, which is a trailer adorned with something of a water ski, which is kind of strange. Does kind of just loosely peg in there, and it rotates along with it. It's very easy to jackknife, but beyond that, yeah, it's just another thing for it to do. I think a lot of people saw this as kind of a cop-out. It's kind of a weird accessory. Not to mention, if you look very carefully, it's not as in scale as you might think. It's a little bit small, but hey, it is what it is. They were trying to give you something a little bit different. Well, let's put that aside for now. It's got uses, but we'll get to those in a bit. For starters, we need to transform this guy into robot mode. I'm going to start by popping off the doors and folding them down like so. Then disengaging all of this. This is a pretty simple transformation, all things considered. I think it's just right between complex and efficient. So we bring those down. Bring those down. Those form up all the legs. All of the legs. All 2 of them. I'm going to rotate the doors around and then rotate the arms out like this. So we have to lower them into position. The arms themselves can come together by rotating the door panels around, pegging them into the forearm like so. Bring down the top of the vehicle. Should kind of clamp in there loosely. Head comes down, pegs in. That will separate out the legs, and that should be it for our transformation job. Well, actually, no. I know someone's already corrected me in the comments. No, because I messed this up too often. I mess these things up too often. Let's make sure I actually get it right. Okay, so yeah, I forgot to put the trailer hitch out. Hey, it's a common thing. You can get it wrong very easily. Hey. That done, we have our Bumblebee in his full robot mode, and you can see, even without bringing in any kind of size comparison, he does have a very small and squat look to him, which is completely intentional by design. So it's not a bad thing, really, because it is Bumblebee. He's supposed to be on the small side of things, and, well, he definitely is. We take a look at the head. He is unmistakably Bumblebee. Very much the G1 head. He's got the horns, he's got the ridges in the right spots, rather smooth face. The only weird thing, soul patch. I'm not sure why they decided Bumblebee starts growing facial hair, but hey, he does, I guess. Oh well, it's at least a little bit different. It makes the Classics version stand out from the classic depictions. This is also where you can start to see, yeah, in order to try and get some light on his face, I have to bring it down, which now you can see where the yellow is really starting to muddle the details. If I take the light away, you can see it a little bit better. You can't see his eyes now, though. Alright, so he does have the thing of, yeah, he is kind of small. What do I have here? I got a Generations Trail Cutter here. I can compare him. So, Trail Cutter is very dusty right now, but beyond this, you can actually tell, yeah, he is quite a bit smaller. A little bit more vertically challenged than even the current Transformer figures. But he does have a fair amount of bulk. One thing about Bumblebee from the show, he's always kind of squat and kind of heavy set as an Autobot, especially the old toy, because the entire... If you remember the shape of a Volkswagen Beetle, it's a little bit rotund. So this is kind of there. He does have a very similar body shape, but he is thinned out quite a bit. So he's kind of grown up. I think this is like a good teenage Bumblebee, if that makes any kind of sense as far as Cybertronians go. For new details, a lot of it has been exposed. We see the back of the seats in the vehicle mode did have some robotic detailing there, and they're fully painted silver. The forearms have a shade of gray rather than the stark black or more yellow that some other depictions would have. Breaks up the black just enough. It gives him a little bit more detail going on. Speaking of, you get a little bit of blue coming through. I'm not entirely sure where the blue comes from. It's just, hey, we put a little bit of blue on him. Because why not at this point? Also, in the center of the chest, you can see he does have the classic rub symbol that Classics did. Mine's peeling off a little bit because the little space they gave for that sticker to go on, you can probably notice it doesn't fit too well. So this sticker was very easy to start coming off, but you can see the faction logo thing works as well as it always did. It's always a very simple trick, isn't it? But hey, it's classic. And that's what these toys were, classics. Other than that, yeah, a lot of it still comes from the vehicle mode, so not a whole lot of surprises in the overall design work. Some panel lines and little details here and there, but for the most part, pretty solid and pretty simple, which is what Classics did, pretty much. He does have a little junk as far as, you know, big door panels on his arms, and he's got this big backpack of rear end, but hey, it is what it is. I'm going to show you the articulation he does have a ball jointed neck, so he has a great range to look up and full rotation all the way around. Still his head hits the hinges in the back, but at that point it's unnatural anyway. Full ball joints in the shoulders with great range of motion, as well as pretty good elbow that goes beyond the 90 and does have full ball joints, so rotation in there as well. No rotation at the wrist, no rotation at the waist, but he does have some decent hips with ball joints in those. He has a good knee, which does not quite get to the 90, but it's nice and solidly constructed, so that's another plus. He also has these gigantic clown shoe feet, which is another signature of the original Bumblebee. No, it doesn't have tilting ankles. He does have a rotation just below the knee to allow you to pose and get him into various other positions. It does give him some decent posability. He's not the best in the Classics line, but he's no slouch either. He does a decent enough job. So, we did explain, well, they wanted to fill out the toy's size with that thing. So let's figure out what this thing is. Well, if we split it apart and extend things outward like so, then give this thing a rotate, we revealed that this is not a ski-doo. This is actually, do they still even make ski-doos? I don't even know. This is actually a clip to go into the little slot there in the back. Attach that down, I'll adjust this out, and hey, there we have Bumblebee with his wing pack, which is actually kind of neat. It's kind of a throwback to the kind of thing they would put in like an Action Master. And Bumblebee actually did have an Action Master that gave him a flight mode when combined. So this is kind of a take on that. It's kind of interesting. The Classics do draw some weird inspiration from time to time, like Grimlock coming more from the Classics, more from the Pretender Grimlock than the original G1. I always thought that was interesting. So that is Classics Bumblebee. It is a pretty solid little package, even though little is the defining word to the toy. Even today's standards, it's kind of on the small side. That said, it's a nice solid representation of G1 Bumblebee, a little bit more grown up and far more modernized. If you're not a big fan of the gray or the white, there is another deco of this toy that came out a few years later. I want to say during Reveal the Shield generations, somewhere in there, that had black for the color scheme, a little bit more movie-esque, but it also was a little bit more cartoon accurate, and the yellow was a little bit more subdued. So there is a slight variance that might be a little bit more to your tastes out there. Either way, I still think this thing holds up. You know, it's a fairly solid toy that gives you a little bit of a unique play pattern as far as Transformers go. Because, you know, Bumblebee didn't always used to be a frontline fighter, so not every Transformer needs to have gigantic guns to be interesting.